10. Laundry dispute. It all began with an argument over laundry. Two brothers got into a dispute over whose turn it was to wash a load of laundry, at which point one of the brothers threw a potted plant at the other one. Shane Fennell, the one who threw the plant, worked himself into such a frenzy that he then pulled out a gun and shot his brother's wife in the face. A neighbor heard the gunshot and went to see what happened. He saw Shane flailing his arms wildly in the yard, where his chrome-plated revolver sat on the front lawn and his brother's wife lay dead. The neighbor told Shane to sit down and wait while the situation was sorted out. He ran inside to call the police. The cops eventually arrived on the scene where Shane was still sitting in the grass, looking absolutely sick with himself. While speaking with police detective Ryan Foote, the innocent brother said that he couldn't believe his eyes when Shane pulled the gun, walked over to his wife, Alexandra Arb Bloodgood, and shot her in the back of the head at close range. It's amazing that a simple argument over laundry could cause such chaos. Shane never did reveal any motive other than pure anger and confusion, but that didn't stop the courts from charging him with second-degree murder in the violent overreaction. 9. The toy collection. A crazy person obsessed with Star Wars has choked his Thai bride to death after she destroyed his collection of toys. According to the murderer, 30-year-old Licky Latouche, his wife had gotten angry with him during an argument, then destroyed his Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker memorabilia, toys that he had been collecting since he was a small child. He was thrown into such a ludicrous fit of rage by what his wife did that he grabbed hold of her throat and strangled her to death. His wife was named Pornpillay Srisroy. The pair had met at a bar while Ricky was on vacation in Bangkok back in 2001. They married after his fourth visit in 2003, and 2 years later she was living with him in the UK. But as most of us know, these types of unions often just don't work out anyway. He had turned into kind of a psycho with a penchant for domestic violence. His wife was fed up. She was threatening to leave, and so she smashed his toys to make a point. In retaliation, he killed her. After the horrible attack, Ricky went immediately to his mom's house. He confessed to his mother what he had done. Since there was no way he could get away with it, she convinced him to turn himself into the police. He has since been sentenced to a minimum of 12 years. 8. Machete Walmart attack. When you go to Walmart, it's best to just keep to yourself. Buy whatever you came to buy and get out of there quickly. If not, you could end up like the 43-year-old man who was nearly slashed to death with a machete after getting into an argument with another customer while shopping at Walmart. Authorities had to be called to the North Jersey store just after 10:30 in the morning, where they found a local resident with a deep cut across the back of his head and the suspect nowhere to be found. The victim was rushed to the hospital with a serious injury, though he did make a full recovery and was eventually released. According to what he told police, he had been standing in line in the electronics department when he started arguing with another customer. He couldn't remember what exactly started the argument, but it got heated enough that the attacker pulled out a machete from under his clothes and tried to cut the guy's head off. Obviously, this created panic in the store. People were screaming and trampling over each other to get away. In all the chaos, the attacker escaped. Amazingly, the cops still haven't managed to track this guy down and arrest him. They're actually asking the public to call them with any information about the attack. Just imagine trying to cut someone's head off in a Walmart and then walking away with no repercussions. In this case, that's exactly what happened. 7. Changing the station. A rideshare driver, a guy working for Uber, has gotten into some serious trouble after a heated argument resulting in him killing one of his passengers. According to his attorney, Jackie Patterson, the driver, was simply trying to make a living for himself with rideshare when his life was flipped completely upside down. The driver said he had pulled over to call the police because 3 of his passengers were refusing to get out of his car. They had been arguing with him to change the radio station. When the driver refused to change the station, they pulled out a gun. He tried to let them out, scared for his own life, but they weren't moving. He was terrified as his passengers waved the gun around. Then he pulled his own weapon out and shot them. One of them died and the other 2 escaped. This is a classic case of self-defense, but the driver is nonetheless being charged with manslaughter. The other 2 passengers, the ones that weren't shot to death, have been charged with battery. We don't know how this case is going to turn out, but there's definitely a lesson to be learned here. If you get into an Uber, maybe just leave the driver and their radio station alone. What do you think should happen to the driver? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. Fans and cheesesteaks. In South Philadelphia, at a locally famous restaurant called Pat's King of Steaks, a conversation between soccer fans turned into a brawl, which left a man dead, his father injured, and another man in serious condition. According to the owner of the restaurant, Frank Olivieri, it was absolute mayhem. It was late on a Thursday night and everyone was eating cheesecakes and minding their own business. But then Isidro Cortez, his 64-year-old father, and one of his friends began arguing with a group of 4 sitting near them. The argument was about soccer, with the attackers being fans of Club America, who had just gotten beat by the Mexico City team. They apparently took the defeat very personally, attacking the men with their fists and even a metal trash can lid. The people being attacked just didn't have the skills they needed to defend themselves. It wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. The manager of the restaurant called the police, which caused the attackers to quickly flee, but the damage had already been done. When police arrived, Isidro Cortez was found dead. The cause of death was blunt force trauma. And believe it or not, this was the second time that someone was killed at this restaurant in just the past 2 months. The previous July, a guy named David Pedro Jr. was shot outside the front doors during an argument gone wrong over a parking space. 5. Child services. A woman in Montana was just sentenced to spend her next 40 years in prison. Why? Because she strangled her boyfriend with a rope after an argument in which he threatened to call Child Protective Services on one of her family members. The guilty party is Sandy Rose Moore, only 19 years old at the time of the killing. She has pleaded guilty to mitigated deliberate homicide in the death of Larry Kuhn. They were living together in a rental home in the town of Dillon. And according to what she told police, she knew exactly what she was doing when she was killing him. But she just couldn't help herself because she was in extreme duress following the argument. Prior to the killing, she had been in desperate need of treatment for her mental health issues, but she never did get that treatment, and her sick state of mind eventually led to her committing this murder. And even though she admitted that she did wrong and that there was no real excuse for it, she will still spend the rest of her life in jail. 4. Stabbing the security. At an Apple store in Chelsea, Manhattan, an argument led to a violent attack that left one guy bleeding out from stab wounds and a female employee with bruises all over her face. According to a statement from police, a dispute erupted on Friday evening when an unidentified attacker and the security guard got into it over wearing a mask in the store. Apparently, the shopper didn't really feel like putting on his mask, so the security guard didn't want to let him in. The maskless individual got so upset that he slapped the security guard in the face and then walked away. But what seemed like the end of a bad situation was only the beginning of an even worse situation. The man came back to the store minutes later, punched a 25-year-old female employee in the face, then pulled out a knife. He slashed the guard across his forehead, then repositioned himself and started stabbing. He punctured the security guard's arm and back with his knife before fleeing on foot. Thankfully, the security guard was taken to the local hospital and treated for his wounds. The store employee suffered swelling to her face from being punched, but did not need medical attention. And yet again, the police were unable to track down and apprehend the attacker. They don't know who he is, they don't know how to find him, and he's currently loose and at large. 3. Gone postal. There's just something about postal workers taking things a little too far. In this most recent case of going postal, a USPS worker got into an argument with a guy at a gas station and then shot him. According to the victim, Darren Jackson, the incident began with the USPS man accidentally bumping into him. This happened outside of a Chevron gas station in Houston, Texas. Both individuals were simply there to get some gas. Darren told ABC 13 News that instead of letting the bump go, he wanted to teach the USPS worker something about how to respect people. But when he confronted the worker, the mailman simply flipped out. It turned into an argument, the argument escalated, and the postal worker pulled out a gun. He didn't just shoot Darren Jackson once, but twice. He hit him once in the arm and a second time in the chest, with a bullet only narrowly missing his heart. Darren now has a great big hole in his chest. To make the story even sadder, Darren Jackson couldn't really afford to stay at the hospital. After he was treated, just hours after taking 2 bullets, he was forced to walk over 1.5 miles back to the gas station to retrieve his vehicle. The USPS worker, who hasn't been named, is now facing charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Amazingly, he's not facing an attempted murder charge, even though he tried to shoot Darren Jackson in the heart. The public is in an outrage because the USPS worker seems to be getting special treatment, probably because they worked for the government. 2. Fighting with dad. An argument between father and son has led to one of them getting life in prison while the other is getting a coffin. Kenneth John Boone of Spring Lake, just 27 years old, is now due to spend the rest of his life in prison, all because of a dispute that he had with his own father. Police say that Boone bludgeoned his dad to death on December 1st, 2019. Judge John Hulsing said during the sentencing hearing that the act was pure evil and that the brutality exhibited was indescribable. The judge was quick to hand down the maximum sentence. But just what exactly happened to push this kid over the edge? On the morning of the murder, Boone had actually called the police to ask for their assistance with his father because they were in a serious fight. But the police never sent a deputy to the home. When Boone called back an hour later, his father was dead. The police got to the scene pretty quickly after they found Boone wandering down the road soaked in blood. We don't know exactly what the two were arguing about, but it did come up during the trial that Boone had serious mental issues. Along with his prison sentence, the judge ordered that he receive mental health treatment. Though to be honest, that's probably not going to do him much good. Stuck in a jail cell for the next 60 years. 1. Arguing on the playground. An argument in a Bronx playground between 2 13-year-old boys ended in bloodshed. The boys had been arguing with one another through text messages, but the argument soon went from virtual to physical when the teens got into it on the playground at about 5:30 in the evening. The text fight sprung up after the two began bickering with each other for no reason on the Snapchat app. But the one boy, whose name has not been released because he's a minor, was so fed up with fighting on the app that he brought a gun to the playground and shot the other boy in the knee. Luckily, the wound wasn't fatal and the kid made a full recovery. The shooter got away and the police were never able to track him down. It wasn't until the shooter's mom saw her son's face on a wanted poster that she grabbed her kid and took him into the police station. He has since been charged with attempted murder, assault, and harassment. But because the shooter is a minor, he's being processed through family court. We have no idea what kind of sentence the judge is going to hand down. What's the craziest argument you've ever seen unfold in front of your very eyes? Let us know in the comments, and thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe for all the latest videos from the channel. See you next time. Bye.